So today in Greg's sourdough, we're going to, instead of just going to the sourdough bread, we're going to make a couple of different loaves, one sweet and one savory. I think you'll enjoy these. So I've already bulked up my starter and I've made my first major rise. I'm going to drop this onto the cutting board, my table, a fair amount of flour. And when I cut this in half, one half is going to go to become a cinnamon bread, and the other half is going to become what my brother calls Stromboli, which is a kind of a riff on an Italian idea, kind of like a calzone or something, but in a big loaf. So we'll get going on those in just a second. Get our dough out. For this, I just use white flour. It seems to make a happy loaf. That you can mix your whole wheat in if you want. There we go. So once we get our two loaves going, we're going to do something a little different this time. Instead of rolling it into a ball and putting it right into the fry pan, I'm going to instead flatten it out a bit. Make it into a kind of a rectangle, roughly. Doesn't have to be precise. It won't be precise. There we go. So we're just going to kind of pat it out. Sticky on this side. You want to pat it out until it's about 1.5 inches or so thick. We're going to start with the Stromboli. What I've done is I made a little tomato sauce. I added some herbes de Provence. I added a few sun-dried tomatoes to this sauce that I'm going to spread on here. The trick to these is to leave yourself a little margin. You can go all the way to this bottom edge and leave margin at the top, margin on this side. You'll find out why in just a second. So I spread on my base sauce, trying to keep my margins clean of sauce and oil. That's going to go on like this. Remember, leave the top and the sides, leave a little margin. You can come down on the bottom, that's okay. There we go. And I thought for this, maybe a little pesto would be good. Trader Joe's has this nice pesto. Put some of that on there. Oh, that looks nice. And then I fixed up a few olives. I'll sprinkle those on. The last thing we got to add is a little Pecorino Romano cheese. I just slice it up and then break it up on here. Now that looks nice. A little bit more. Now the trick with these is that sometimes you have to clean your pan because the yummy contents leak out. So that's why we leave the margin, that's why we leave the top without any of the material that we're putting on, any of the sauces or anything. And then I was down at the garden yesterday and found some garlic scapes. So they're going in here too. This is a good opportunity to clean out your fridge. You know how things get pushed to the back, you use them once and then they don't get used for a while. So check it out, clean it out, put it in. Savory bread, you will find a way that makes it work for you. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to roll this up. And so I just start here at the low end, and I just start rolling it. That looks easy. Pretty soon I have the log. Now the upper end, what I want to do is to try to seal it. That's why I didn't want any oil on that if I could possibly avoid it. And the two ends, I seal those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to curl it around on itself so that the two ends are looking at each other, just like that. There we go. And the whole thing's going in the pan. It's going to be over there for the second rise. Now we're going to move to a sweet one. And these are wonderful. This is kind of a sourdough riff on cinnamon rolls. Here we go. Flatten it out. It's quite easy. It's surprising how cooperative the dough is when you flatten it out, and you wonder how in the world is this going to turn into a loaf of bread. This one needs a little bit of encouragement down here. There we go. It's quite cooperative, as you can see. Now, with this one, it's really tricky and important to keep the butter and the sugar away from those margins so that you can get a little hopeful seal. They're so delicious that even when they leak into your hot pot and they start smelling and making smoke and all kinds of things, and then you have this caramelized stuff you have to clean up. You wonder, oh, was that a good idea? And then you taste it and you know it was a great idea. So I'm going to put butter and this brown sugar into that same area all the way down to the bottom, margin, margin, margin at the top. This one you want to put enough sugar in so that your 3 or 4 tablespoons of butter stay incorporated in the sugar, and they don't just want to go running off on their own like just an oil. And I can see right now that I've got, you see how the butter is beginning to show here on the surface? I didn't put enough sugar into this to get the butter to bind. So what I'm going to do is just cheat a little sugar in here. It's okay. There we go. And that will pick up that extra oil. Maybe you can put too much sugar in, but not really. And now, daughter got me some Saigon cinnamon from Spice House. And oh, is it marvelous stuff. That's going to go on here. Put on more than you think. More than you think is probably less than a tablespoon, but more than a teaspoon. Oh, that's marvelous stuff. You can smell it. Oh, it's great. And then, I love raisins. Maybe somebody in your family does too. And if they don't, just put the raisins on half the bread. Otherwise, the whole thing gets raisins. There we go. Now, you see how we left the margins not at the bottom. Start the roll. Now, I'm going to stop this video as soon as these are making their second rise, their second proof. There we go, we get it sealed. And then remember, seal the ends, and then bring the ends around to touch each other. Not like a snail, kind of. There we go. Now what I'm going to do, you'll notice that the seams are all up. And I'm going to put that down in my pan for the second rise, because then when I flip it into the hot pot, all those seams are going to be up. and hopefully that'll keep it from leaking onto my enamel and making a big cleanup job. We'll see. So here we go. In it goes. They're there for the second rise. And now in about an hour, I'll put those into the hot enamel pots and cook it just like we do normally. 25 minutes lid on, 10 minutes lid off. And you'll have a great savory bread and maybe some cinnamon bread to enjoy. They tend to go all at one time, so plan it around a time when you've got a special meal, and it's very enjoyable. I hope you enjoy the savory Stromboli bread and the cinnamon bread.